Summer 1969. In the turbulent 60s, the news grabbed you, made you pay attention. There was a new president in the White House, soldiers in Vietnam, a man on the moon, and 500,000 young people at Woodstock.
Well, I came across a child at dawn. He was walking along the road, and I asked him, tell me where are you going? And he told me, said, I'm going down to Yaska's farm, gonna join in a rock and roll band, gonna get back.
Yeah, it's outside. It's beautiful.
Woodstock became a milestone for the youth culture.
Some place where you can be totally free to do and be anything you want, and nobody's going to say anything or think anything about you.
That's right. Media didn't know how to deal with it. The media were taken by surprise, as everyone was, so you couldn't blame them for that. But they also, they didn't see the big picture, and they didn't know how to quite grapple with it all.
Early on, the media focused on problems. A nearly 20-mile traffic backup, heavy rains, food shortages, injuries, and illegal drugs. Barnard Collier of the New York Times, one of the few journalists covering the story, quickly found himself at odds with editors back in Manhattan.
They wanted a story that led with a catastrophe in the making. And I said, it's not a catastrophe in the making. This is really an interesting look at what happens when it's not turning into a catastrophe. And to turn it into a catastrophe is just wrong. And I insisted that if that's the way it be done, they can get somebody else to write about it.
The Times top editor sided with Collier. He could write it the way he wanted. Rolling Stone magazine, born nearly 2 years earlier, was one of the few publications dedicated to the rock music scene.
What was exciting about being in the music business, as a writer or as a musician even, was that it was the only arm of the media at that time that young people not only had a say in, but they had some control over. Everything else was run by another generation.
Freedom, 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 freedom.
From the stage, the sea of faces was as powerful as the music.
Freedom.
I looked out and saw and felt that I was actually seeing the freedom that we as a generation had been seeking since the 1950s. We were talking about being free enough to get together.
I'm getting tired of waiting and fooling around. I find somebody that won't make me feel like a clown. Let's can't go on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Before Woodstock, there wasn't really a thriving music journalism field. And then suddenly you saw rock music as sort of a big, viable field.
It validated Rolling Stone, that there was an importance to what they were doing.
I think Woodstock was a milestone in media coverage because, for one thing, it greatly underscored a huge generation gap and how polarized society was at that time.
To cover it was wonderful. I'd never been in a sort of a giant peaceful anarchy. And it was fun to cover. I mean, people were great.
By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. And everywhere was a song and a celebration.
Most of the causes we espoused, we were right about. Peace is better than war. Racism stinks. Civil rights are crucial. You know, we weren't wrong. We weren't wrong about any of that. We were wrong about the drugs, but we weren't wrong about any of the rest.
We are stars.